I was 28, a junior archivist known for my precision and quiet determination, and I looked every bit the part. Long, glossy dark hair fell in soft waves down my back, catching the warm glow of the antique reading lamps like spilled ink. My emerald green eyes, framed by thick lashes, often made people open up to me too quickly during research interviews, and my body moved with the steady confidence that came from years of navigating dusty stacks and late-night cataloging sessions. The simple black silk blouse and tailored pencil skirt I wore were practical for the work ahead, though the rain had left my skin dewy, and my bold red lipstick stood out sharply against the dim lighting. I wasn't here to draw attention. I was here because the rare Codex Novem, a lost manuscript rumored to contain the only surviving map to a network of forgotten underground archives beneath the city, had finally surfaced in the restricted collection, and I refused to let anyone else claim the discovery. I pushed through the heavy oak doors, the familiar scent of aged paper, leather bindings and rain-soaked wood wrapping around me like a warning. The library was nearly deserted at this hour, the grand hall echoing with only the faint hum of overhead lights and the steady drum of rain against the tall arched windows. Clutching my research notebook tightly, I headed straight for the restricted archives room, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. That's when I felt it. Eyes on me. Not the casual glance of a lingering student or the bored look of a night guard. This gaze was sharp, focused, and calculating, as if someone was already measuring exactly how much of a threat I posed. I turned my head slowly toward the shadows near the grand staircase, and my breath caught. He stood there like he belonged to the darkness itself, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that looked both careless and deliberate. His jaw was sharply defined, his cheekbones high, and those eyes, stormy blue, intense, locked onto mine as though he had been waiting specifically for me. He wore a charcoal gray coat over a black shirt, the sleeves pushed up to reveal powerful forearms marked with faint old scars. A silver watch glinted on his wrist, and the way he carried himself suggested he was accustomed to moving through places where ordinary people were never meant to go. Our eyes held across the quiet hall. A slow, unreadable half-smile touched his lips. Not warm or reassuring, but the kind of expression that told me he already knew secrets the rest of the world had long forgotten. He pushed off the wall and started walking toward me, his steps eerily silent on the polished marble. Every movement was controlled and efficient, like a man who never wasted energy. As he drew closer, the faint scent of rain, old books, and something sharper, perhaps gunpowder or electrical ozone, reached me. The quiet intensity radiating from him made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that the cool air shifted around us. "Elena Voss," he said, his voice low and rough, like gravel wrapped in velvet. It wasn't a question. He already knew who I was. I kept my expression carefully neutral, though my pulse had begun to race. Most people wait for an introduction before using my full name. "Who are you?" "Jack Harlan." He didn't extend a hand. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, studying me with those stormy blue eyes. "You're here for the Codex Novem, aren't you? The lost manuscript said to hold the original map to the buried archives beneath the city." My fingers tightened around my notebook. Very few people outside my narrow academic circle even knew I was pursuing that particular document. Fewer still understood what it supposedly revealed. An underground network of vaults that governments and private collectors had tried to keep hidden for centuries. "How do you know that?" I asked, my voice steady despite the sudden surge of adrenaline. "Because someone else knows it too," he replied flatly. "And they're already inside the building. 2 men, armed, heading straight for the restricted section. They'll reach the archives room in less than 3 minutes." A chill slid down my spine. I didn't ask how he knew the details. Something in his tone told me this wasn't speculation or a game. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered, glancing toward the closed archives door. "Because I need what's inside that codex as well," he said without hesitation. "But I'd rather not have to navigate around your body to get it. So here's the deal. In 60 seconds, the lights in this entire wing will go out. When they do, you run for the service stairs on the east side. Don't stop. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't trust anyone who claims they're here to help, except me." The rain hammered harder against the tall windows, thunder rumbling distantly like the building itself was bracing for what was coming. He reached out and adjusted the collar of my blouse with surprising precision, his fingers brushing my skin for only a fraction of a second. The touch was purely practical, checking that nothing I wore would catch light or make noise in the dark. "Ready?" he asked, his stormy eyes never leaving mine. I should have called security. I should have turned and walked straight out the front doors into the pouring rain. Instead, I gave the smallest nod, my emerald green eyes locked on his. And just like that, with the scent of old books and rain filling my lungs and my heart pounding in my ears, my quiet evening of research turned into something violently, terrifyingly alive. I had no idea how deep this night would drag me, or how completely Jack Harlan would pull me into a hidden world of forgotten secrets, buried dangers, and a conspiracy that stretched back centuries. But in that moment, standing in the shadows of the old library, I knew one thing with cold certainty. The storm had found me, and it was only just beginning. The lights died exactly when Jack said they would. One moment, the grand hall was bathed in the soft amber glow of antique lamps and emergency strips along the baseboards. The next, everything plunged into absolute blackness, the kind so thick it pressed against my eyes like a physical weight. The only sound was the relentless drumming of rain against the tall arched windows and the sudden, sharp click of emergency generators trying, and failing, to kick in somewhere deep in the building's old wiring. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I could feel it in my throat. For one frozen second, I stood there, notebook clutched to my chest, the scent of old paper and rain suddenly sharper in the dark. Then Jack's voice cut through the blackness, low and urgent, right beside my ear. "Run. East Service stairs. Now." I didn't hesitate. My heels came off in a single fluid motion. I kicked them under a nearby reading table so they wouldn't click, and I sprinted barefoot across the cold marble. The floor was slick from tracked-in rain, but I knew this building better than most people knew their own homes. Years of late nights cataloging had burned the layout into my memory. Every corridor, every hidden stairwell, every blind corner. Behind me, I heard the first shouts. Male voices, clipped and angry, echoing from the direction of the main archives entrance. Flashlight beams sliced through the darkness like knives, sweeping wildly across the walls. One beam caught the edge of a marble column just as I ducked behind it, my dark hair and black blouse helping me melt into the shadows. Jack was somewhere nearby. I couldn't see him, but I could feel him. A silent, moving presence that seemed to anticipate every turn I made. When I reached the East Service door, a strong hand closed around my wrist, guiding me through without a word. The door opened with only the faintest creak, and we slipped into the narrow stairwell that smelled of concrete dust and old metal. We descended fast, my bare feet silent on the cold steps, Jack moving beside me with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. 2 floors down, he pulled me into a small alcove behind a utility panel, pressing my back against the wall. His body shielded mine from the stairwell opening above. His breathing was steady, controlled. Mine was not. "Stay quiet," he whispered, so close I could feel the warmth of his breath against my temple. "They're checking the upper levels first. We have maybe 4 minutes before they realize the Codex case is already empty." My mind raced. "You took it?" "No, not yet." His stormy blue eyes caught the faintest glow from an emergency exit sign far below, just enough for me to see the hard set of his jaw. The case was rigged, motion sensor. If anyone had opened it tonight, the whole building would have gone into lockdown, and the real Codex would have been moved automatically to a secondary vault. "I disabled the trigger 10 minutes before you arrived. The manuscript is still in its original case, but the decoy documents are gone. They think someone already stole it." I stared at him in the near darkness, my emerald eyes narrowing. "You knew I was coming. You knew exactly when. You planned this." "I monitored the archive request logs," he said simply. "Your name appeared 3 days ago. I've been watching this building for weeks. You're the only person who has the combination of clearance, knowledge, and persistence to actually find the real map inside the Codex. Most academics give up when the footnotes turn contradictory. You don't." A chill that had nothing to do with the cold stairwell ran down my spine. "Who are you, really, Jack Harlan? And why do you need the map?" Footsteps echoed above us, heavy, deliberate. 2 sets. They were moving faster now, checking every door. Jack's hand stayed on my arm, firm but not painful, keeping me still. "Later. Right now we move." We continued down, faster this time. At the basement level, the stairwell ended in a heavy fire door marked "Mechanical, Authorized, Personnel Only." Jack produced a small black device from his coat pocket, pressed it against the electronic lock, and the light turned green with a soft beep. The door swung open into a labyrinth of pipes, boilers, and dimly lit corridors that smelled of damp concrete and machine oil. We wove through the maze without speaking. Jack moved like he had memorized every turn, every junction. Twice he pulled me into side passages, just as flashlight beams swept past the main corridor ahead. Once, when a guard's radio crackled nearby, he pressed me flat against a warm pipe, his body shielding me completely, while the man passed less than 10 feet away. When the footsteps faded, I finally whispered, "You still haven't answered my question." Jack glanced back at me, his expression unreadable in the low red emergency lighting. "I'm someone who lost everything because of what's buried under this city. The archives aren't just old vaults. They're a record of every deal, every secret, every experiment that powerful people have tried to erase for the last 200 years. The Codex Novem contains the master key, coordinates, access codes, even the override sequences for the final vault. Whoever controls that map controls information that could topple governments, corporations, entire bloodlines." He stopped at a junction where 4 tunnels met, listening for a moment before choosing the leftmost one. "The men upstairs work for an organization called the Veil. They don't want the map found. They want it destroyed, or kept under their exclusive control. They've already eliminated 3 other researchers who got too close. You were next on their list." My stomach tightened. "And you? Are you with them or against them?" "Against." The single word was flat, final. But don't mistake that for heroism, Elena. I need the map for my own reasons, personal ones. If helping you keeps you alive long enough to translate the Codex, then we have a temporary alliance. The moment that changes, the alliance ends. We reached a heavy steel door at the end of the tunnel. Jack entered another code. Beyond it lay an old service elevator that looked like it hadn't been used since the 1970s. He pulled the gate shut behind us and hit the lowest button, sub-level 3. As the elevator descended with a groan of ancient cables, I studied him in the flickering overhead bulb. Tall, scarred, calm in the middle of chaos. The kind of man who didn't panic because panic had been burned out of him long ago. "You said they eliminated 3 researchers," I said quietly. "How do you know I won't be number 4? "Because you're with me now." His stormy eyes met mine without flinching. "And because you're smarter than the others. You didn't come here alone with just notes and enthusiasm. You came prepared. I saw the encrypted drive in your bag and the backup copies of the partial translations you already made. That kind of preparation buys time." The elevator shuddered to a stop. The doors opened onto a narrow concrete corridor lined with rusted pipes and flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed like angry insects. The air was colder here, heavier, with the smell of earth and something metallic. Jack led me down the passage until we reached a small utility room. Inside were metal shelves, old filing cabinets, and a battered wooden table. He closed the door behind us, locked it, and finally allowed himself to lean against the wall for a moment. "We wait here until the search moves upstairs again," he said. "Then we go back up, retrieve the real Codex, and get out. After that, you translate the map. I provide protection and extraction. Once we have the coordinates, we part ways." I set my notebook on the table, my bare feet aching from the cold floor. "You make it sound simple. It won't be. The Codex is written in a cipher that mixes medieval Latin, alchemical symbols, and 19th century cryptographic overlays. Even with my notes, full translation could take days, maybe weeks, under ideal conditions. We don't have ideal conditions." Jack's half smile returned, colder this time. "Then we make the conditions ideal. I have a safe location prepared, supplies, equipment, and no one knows it exists except me." He pulled a small black backpack from behind one of the filing cabinets, clearly stashed earlier, and tossed it onto the table. Inside were 2 compact flashlights, bottled water, protein bars, a first aid kit, and a slim laptop with no visible branding. "Power is limited," he said. "Use it only when necessary. The Veil will be monitoring cell signals and Wi-Fi. No calls, no messages, no logging into any university system." I opened the laptop anyway, fingers flying across the keys as I pulled up my encrypted research files. "Then we start now. While we wait, show me what you already know about the Codex. Every detail. If we're doing this together, even temporarily, I need to know I'm not walking into a trap." Jack watched me for a long moment, stormy eyes assessing. Then he pulled up a second chair, sat across from me, and began speaking in that low, precise voice. He told me about the historical references he had gathered, fragments from suppressed 18th century letters, redacted government files, even a single surviving photograph of the Codex's cover taken before it disappeared in 1947. He knew the vault system had 7 levels, each guarded by increasingly complex mechanisms. He knew the final vault contained something called the archive core, not just documents, but physical artifacts that could rewrite large parts of recorded history. I listened, taking rapid notes by flashlight, cross-referencing with my own research. Questions spilled out of me. about symbol variations, possible key phrases, potential decoys in the text. Jack answered everyone without hesitation, though he never volunteered more than I asked. Hours passed. The rain continued far above us, a constant, distant roar. Twice we heard muffled footsteps and radio chatter in the tunnels above, but they never reached our level. Jack remained alert the entire time, one ear always tuned to the corridor outside. At some point, he slid a protein bar and a bottle of water across the table to me, without comment. I ate mechanically, mind still racing through cipher patterns. "You're good at this," he said eventually, watching me work. It wasn't praise, just observation. "I'm good at uncovering truth," I replied, not looking up from the screen. "Even when people try to bury it. That's why you chose me, isn't it?" Jack didn't deny it. "Among other reasons." Silence fell again, broken only by the tapping of keys and the distant thunder. Eventually, the radio chatter above faded completely. Jack checked his watch, an old mechanical piece that didn't rely on satellites, and stood. "Time to move. The search team is pulling back to coordinate with external units. We have a narrow window to reach the archives room, retrieve the Codex, and exit through the loading dock on the north side. After that, we disappear." I closed the laptop, slipped it into the backpack, and stood. My feet were cold and sore, but adrenaline kept the discomfort distant. Jack handed me a small matte black flashlight. "Keep it on the lowest setting. Stay behind me. If anything goes wrong, run for the surface and don't wait. The map is more important than either of us." I met his stormy blue eyes one last time before we stepped back into the corridor. "I don't run from the truth, Jack Harlan, not even when it tries to kill me." He gave that half smile again, sharper now, almost approving. "Then let's go find it." We slipped back into the tunnels, two shadows moving through the dark heart of the city, chasing a manuscript that could either expose centuries of lies or bury us both with them. The storm above continued to rage, and down here, in the quiet concrete veins beneath the library, a far more dangerous one was only beginning to gather strength. We moved through the service tunnels like ghosts. Jack led the way with the quiet precision of someone who had memorized every inch of this underground labyrinth long before tonight. I stayed 2 steps behind him, bare feet silent on the cold concrete, the small black flashlight in my hand, casting the narrowest possible beam at the ground. Every few yards he would pause, listen, then motion me forward with a single economical gesture. The air grew heavier the deeper we went, damp, metallic, laced with the faint ozone smell of old electrical systems that hadn't been properly maintained in decades. My mind raced faster than my feet. The Codex Novum wasn't just another rare book. It was a key that could unlock vaults containing suppressed documents, experimental records, and physical artifacts that powerful institutions had spent centuries trying to erase. If Jack was telling the truth, and every instinct I possessed said he was, then the men hunting us upstairs belonged to the Veil, an organization that existed to keep those secrets buried. And now I was walking straight into their crosshairs alongside a man I had met less than an hour ago. We reached a junction where 4 tunnels converged. Jack killed his light completely and pressed me against the wall behind a thick bundle of pipes. His hand rested lightly on my shoulder, not gripping, just steadying, as flashlight beams swept past the main corridor 20 feet away. 2 guards this time, their voices low and professional. "Confirmed the decoy package is missing. Director wants the entire lower level swept again. Target Voss is still unaccounted for. Harlan's file says he's extremely dangerous. Shoot on sight if you see him." My pulse thundered in my ears. Jack didn't move. He didn't even breathe loudly. When the beams finally disappeared around the corner, he waited another full 30 seconds before signaling me to continue. We climbed a narrow metal ladder bolted to the wall, emerging through a maintenance hatch into the sub-basement directly beneath the restricted archives room. The space was cramped, filled with humming ventilation units and rows of old metal filing cabinets that hadn't been touched since the 1980s. Jack moved to a specific cabinet, slid it aside with surprising ease, and revealed a hidden access panel in the concrete wall. "Original builder's modification," he murmured. "Most people don't know it exists." He entered a long alphanumeric code. The panel slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss, revealing a short, dimly lit corridor that ended at another heavy door, this one marked with faded red warning signs and a modern biometric scanner. Jack stepped aside. "Your turn. The archives room security still recognizes your clearance. Place your hand on the scanner. If it asks for secondary verification, use the passphrase you submitted with your last request. The map reveals what history conceals." I hesitated for only a fraction of a second. Every rational part of me screamed that this could be the moment he betrayed me. But the alternative, staying trapped down here while the veil closed in, was worse. I pressed my palm against the scanner. A soft green light scanned my hand, then the screen prompted for the passphrase. I spoke it clearly. The door unlocked with a heavy mechanical thunk. We slipped inside the restricted archives room. The space was pitch black except for the faint red glow of emergency exit signs. Jack moved immediately to the climate-controlled display case in the center of the room. The Codex Novum rested inside, a thick, leather-bound volume with brass clasps and symbols embossed on the cover that looked both medieval and strangely modern. He didn't touch it. Instead, he pulled a small black device from his coat and ran it slowly over the case. "Motion sensors disabled," he said quietly. "Pressure plates neutralized, but there's still a silent alarm wired to an external relay. We have 90 seconds once I open the case." I stepped forward, my bare feet cold on the tile floor. "Let me do it. I know how these cases are balanced." Jack nodded once and stepped back, giving me space. I took a slow breath, then carefully released the latches in the exact sequence I had studied in the archive schematics. The glass lid lifted with a soft hiss of preserved air. The codex lay there, ancient pages slightly yellowed, the leather cover cool and surprisingly supple under my fingers. The moment I lifted it, a faint click sounded somewhere in the walls, the silent alarm triggering. "Time's up," Jack said. "Move." We retreated through the hidden panel, Jack sliding the filing cabinet back into place behind us. I clutched the codex against my chest like a shield, its weight both thrilling and terrifying. We descended another ladder into an even older section of the tunnels, this one with brick walls dripping with moisture and bare bulbs that flickered intermittently. Halfway down the new corridor, Jack suddenly stopped and pulled me into a shallow alcove. His hand covered my mouth gently but firmly. Seconds later, 3 armed men passed the junction ahead of us, moving fast, their flashlight beams cutting sharp angles through the darkness. When they were gone, Jack lowered his hand. "They're tightening the net. We can't go back the way we came. There's an old storm drain exit 2 levels down that leads to the river. It's risky. The water will be high from the rain, but it's our best chance." I nodded, adrenaline keeping exhaustion at bay. "Then we take it. But first, we need to confirm the codex is genuine. If it's a fake, we're risking everything for nothing." We found another utility room, smaller than the last. Jack barricaded the door with a heavy metal cabinet while I cleared space on a battered metal table. Using the laptop from his backpack and the narrow beam of my flashlight, I opened the Codex with careful reverence. The first pages were exactly as the historical fragments had described. Dense medieval Latin mixed with alchemical symbols and what looked like early cryptographic overlays. But as I turned further, my breath caught. There, hidden in the marginalia on page 47, was a symbol I had only seen in one classified photograph before. A 7-pointed star intersected by a modern GPS coordinate grid. "It's real," I whispered, tracing the symbol with a gloved finger I had pulled from the backpack. This grid wasn't invented until the 1970s. Someone updated the Codex decades after it was supposedly lost. The map inside isn't just historical, it's been maintained. Jack leaned over my shoulder, studying the page. His presence was close but never intrusive, purely functional. "Can you start decoding it here?" "Not fully. The cipher changes every 7 pages. I'll need my full reference library and at least 48 uninterrupted hours to produce a reliable translation, but I can give us the first coordinate set right now." My fingers flew across the laptop keys as I cross-referenced the visible symbols with my encrypted notes. Jack stood guard at the door, listening to the distant sounds of the search above us. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, I looked up. The first vault entrance is located beneath the old central rail yard, the one abandoned in 1962. Access point is marked by a specific brick pattern in the eastern tunnel wall, but there's a warning inscribed here in invisible ink under blacklight. Only the prepared may enter. The unprepared feed the dark. Jack's expression hardened. The Veil knows that location too. They'll have teams waiting. We need to reach the storm drain before they realize we're already below them. We packed up quickly. I wrapped the Codex in a waterproof sleeve from Jack's bag and secured it inside my blouse against my skin for protection. Then we moved again. Faster now, the urgency pressing on us like the weight of the city above. The storm drain tunnel was exactly where Jack said it would be. A large concrete pipe, half filled with rushing rainwater from the night's downpour. The current was strong, cold, and littered with debris. Jack tied a thin but sturdy rope between us, not for romance or comfort, but pure practicality in case one of us was swept away. "Stay close to the wall," he instructed. "Keep your head above water. If you feel yourself losing balance, pull the rope twice. I'll pull you back." We entered the rushing water together. It was shockingly cold, rising to my waist and then my chest as we moved deeper into the pipe. The Codex pressed against my ribs like a living thing. Rainwater poured in from grates above, thunder rumbling so loudly it vibrated through the concrete around us. Twice the current tried to pull me under. Each time, Jack's steady grip on the rope kept me upright. We didn't speak. Conversation was impossible over the roar of water, but his presence was a silent anchor in the chaos. After what felt like an eternity, we emerged into a wider overflow chamber near the river. Jack helped me climb onto a narrow maintenance ledge, both of us drenched and breathing hard. The Codex was still dry inside its sleeve. My notebook and the laptop had survived in waterproof pouches. Jack checked the exit grate above us. "We're clear for now. The Veil will expect us to head for the surface immediately. Instead, we go to the safe location I prepared, an old warehouse on the industrial edge of the river. It's off-grid, stocked, and completely unknown to them." He looked at me then, rain and river water streaming down his face, stormy blue eyes steady in the dim light filtering through the grate. "You still have a choice, Elena Voss. Walk away now. Take the Codex to the authorities if you want, or come with me and finish what we started. But understand this. Once we leave this chamber together, there is no going back to your old life. The veil will hunt you, and I can't promise I can protect you forever. I stood there on the wet ledge, soaked to the bone, bare feet aching, the weight of an ancient manuscript pressed against my heart. My emerald eyes met his without flinching. I don't run from the truth, Jack. I uncover it, even when it tries to drown me. A faint, almost approving nod was his only reply. He pushed the grate open. Cold night air and fresh rain rushed in. Together we climbed out into the storm-lashed city, two shadows carrying a secret that could rewrite history, or end us both. The real hunt had only just begun. The rain had not let up. It hammered the city in relentless sheets as Jack and I slipped out of the storm-drained grate and into the shadows of the old industrial waterfront. My bare feet stung against the wet asphalt, but I ignored the pain. The Codex, still wrapped in its waterproof sleeve and pressed against my skin beneath my soaked blouse, felt heavier with every step, a constant reminder of how much danger I now carried. Jack moved like a shadow himself, staying close to the chain-link fences and abandoned loading docks, never stepping into the pools of light cast by the few working street lamps. I followed his lead exactly, matching his pace, my long, dark hair plastered to my back and shoulders. The emerald green of my eyes scanned every dark corner, every possible ambush point. The adrenaline that had kept me going in the tunnels was beginning to fade, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. We didn't speak until we had put 3 blocks between us and the library district. Only then did Jack slow slightly and glance back at me. 2 more blocks to the safe house, he said, voice barely audible over the rain. Stay tight to the wall. If I raise my hand, freeze. If I run, you run. I nodded once. Questions burned in my throat. About the veil, about his scars, about why he trusted me with any of this. But I held them back. Survival first. Answers later. The safe house turned out to be an old brick warehouse on the edge of the derelict rail yard, half hidden behind overgrown weeds and rusted shipping containers. From the outside, it looked abandoned. Broken windows boarded with plywood, graffiti-covered walls, a chain and padlock on the main door. Jack led me around to a side entrance, produced a key that looked far too new for the setting, and unlocked a heavy steel door that had been disguised to look like rusted sheet metal. Inside, the contrast was startling. The ground floor was still derelict, piles of old crates, dust, and cobwebs, but Jack moved a false wall panel aside to reveal a narrow staircase leading down. We descended into a completely different world, a clean, functional basement level that had clearly been reinforced and modernized in secret. Concrete walls had been lined with soundproofing panels. LED strips provided low, steady lighting. There were metal shelves stocked with non-perishable food, medical supplies, bottled water, and several locked weapon cases that Jack didn't open in front of me. A long work table dominated the center of the main room, already set up with a powerful laptop, multiple external hard drives, a high-resolution scanner, and a portable black light station. 2 cots were pushed against the far wall, each with a clean sleeping bag and a small duffel containing basic clothing. Jack locked the entrance behind us and finally allowed himself to relax a fraction. He shrugged off his wet coat, revealing the black shirt beneath, still damp and clinging to his broad shoulders. Power is from a generator and solar backup on the roof, silent and off-grid, he said. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal that can be traced. Water comes from a filtered rainwater system. We can stay here for weeks if necessary. I set the Codex down carefully on the work table and peeled off the waterproof sleeve. My hands were steady despite everything. Impressive setup for someone who claims this is just a temporary alliance. Jack gave a short, humorless laugh. I've been planning to retrieve that manuscript for over a year. This place was ready long before I knew your name would appear in the archive logs. He tossed me a dry towel and a set of clean clothes from one of the duffels. Simple black pants and a long-sleeved thermal shirt that would fit me reasonably well. Change. You're soaked. Hypothermia won't help us translate anything. I stepped behind a privacy screen he had rigged in the corner and changed quickly, wringing out my wet blouse and skirt as best I could. When I emerged, Jack had already changed into dry clothes and was boiling water on a small portable stove for instant coffee. He handed me a mug without comment. We sat at the work table. The Codex lay open between us under the bright task light. I pulled on thin cotton gloves and began the careful process of examining the pages again, this time with the black light and my reference files loaded on the laptop. Jack watched in silence for a long time, occasionally standing to check the security monitors mounted on the wall, small screens showing feeds from hidden cameras around the warehouse perimeter. The rain continued to drum against the building above us, but down here it felt strangely insulated, almost peaceful, if not for the constant tension in the air. After nearly an hour of cross-referencing symbols, I looked up. The first coordinate set points to the abandoned rail yard we passed on the way here, specifically an old maintenance tunnel beneath Track 7, but the second layer of the cipher suggests there's a biometric lock. It requires a blood sample from someone descended from the original architects. That's why the Veil has been eliminating researchers. They're looking for the right bloodline. Jack's expression didn't change, but his stormy blue eyes sharpened. And you think you can bypass it? Not bypass. Decode. There's a secondary chemical key hidden in the ink. If I can isolate the exact compound, we might be able to synthesize a substitute. But it will take time. At least 36 hours of uninterrupted work. He nodded slowly. Then that's what we do. I'll handle security and supply runs. You handle the Codex. We sleep in shifts. 4 hours each. No exceptions. The hours that followed blurred into a tense, focused rhythm. I worked at the table under the bright light, notebook filling with symbols, partial translations, and cross-references. Jack moved around the safe house like a silent guardian, checking monitors, reinforcing the entrance, preparing simple meals from the stock supplies. He never hovered, never interrupted unless I asked for something specific. When I needed a stronger light or a different magnification tool, he produced it without question. At one point, deep into the night, I looked up from the Codex to find him standing by the monitors, arms crossed, staring at a feed that showed nothing but empty rain-swept streets. You said this was personal for you, I said quietly. What did the Veil take from you? Jack was silent for so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, without turning around. My sister. She was an archivist too. Smarter than both of us combined. She got too close to the Codex 8 years ago. The Veil made it look like an accident. A late-night mugging that went wrong. But I found the real files. They killed her because she refused to hand over her partial translation. I've been hunting the map ever since. His voice was flat, controlled, but I heard the steel beneath it, the kind forged in grief and rage. I'm sorry, I said simply. There was nothing else to offer. He finally turned to face me. Don't be sorry. Be careful. The moment they realize we have the real Codex, they'll stop playing games. They'll burn this entire district if they have to. We worked through the rest of the night and into the gray, rainy morning. I managed to decode the first full coordinate set and identify the chemical compound needed for the blood substitute. Jack left once, briefly, to retrieve additional supplies from a hidden cache nearby, returning with fresh food, more batteries, and a secure satellite phone that could only send pre-approved emergency signals. By the time we took our first sleep shift, my eyes were burning and my shoulders ached from hours hunched over the ancient pages. Jack took the first watch. I lay down on one of the cots, the Codex locked in a reinforced case beside me, and fell into a heavy, dreamless sleep. 4 hours later, he woke me with a quiet touch on my shoulder. "Your turn," he said. "I've reinforced the outer doors. The monitors are clear for now. Get some more work done if you can." "I'll rest." I took over the watch, sipping strong coffee and returning to the Codex. The symbols seemed to shift and dance under the light, revealing new layers with every pass of the blacklight. Slowly, a picture was emerging, not just of hidden vaults, but of a vast network of suppressed knowledge that could change how the world understood its own history. Jack slept like a soldier, lightly, waking at the slightest sound. When he rose again, we shared a simple meal of canned soup and protein bars at the work table. The Codex opened between us like a living puzzle. "The second vault requires a specific frequency emitter," I told him, pointing to a newly decoded passage. "Something that resonates at 7.83 hertz. The Schumann resonance. If we can build or acquire one, it should open the outer door without triggering the bloodlock." Jack studied the page. "I can source the components, but building it here will take time and risk exposure." "Then we take the risk," I said, "because the alternative is letting the veil destroy everything this Codex protects." He met my emerald eyes across the table, stormy blue meeting green in the stark, artificial light. "Agreed." Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away footprints and evidence alike. Inside the safe house, two unlikely allies worked side by side, one driven by grief and vengeance, the other by an unyielding need to uncover the truth, piecing together a map that could either free the past or bury us with it. The storm above showed no sign of stopping, and neither did we. The safe house had begun to feel like both sanctuary and prison. By the third day underground, the constant hum of the generator and the distant roar of rain above us had settled into a strange, rhythmic backdrop to our work. My eyes burned from hours under the bright task lights, but I refused to stop. The Codex lay open on the metal table like a living creature, its pages whispering centuries of suppressed truths. Long strands of my dark hair were pulled back into a messy knot to keep them out of the way, and my emerald green eyes flicked constantly between the ancient symbols, my notebook, and the laptop screen. CK moved around the space with the same quiet efficiency he had shown since the night in the library. He checked the security monitors every 30 minutes, reinforced weak points in the doors, and prepared simple meals without complaint. We spoke little beyond what was necessary for the work: coordinates, cipher variations, potential risks, but the silence between us was no longer uncomfortable. It was focused, professional. Two people bound by a shared goal and the knowledge that the veil could find us at any moment. On the morning of day 4, I finally cracked the second layer of the cipher. I sat back suddenly, heart racing, and rubbed my tired eyes. I have it. The frequency emitter needs to be tuned precisely to 7.83 hertz. But there's more. The second vault isn't just a storage room, it's a resonance chamber. The Codex warns that incorrect frequency will trigger a collapse mechanism. The entire tunnel system could be sealed or flooded. Jack set down the tool he had been using to modify a small electronic device and came to stand beside the table. He studied the page I had marked, his stormy blue eyes narrowing as he absorbed the new information. The faint scars on his forearms caught the light as he leaned forward. "Can you build the emitter here?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "With the components you brought back yesterday?" "Yes. But it will take at least 12 hours of continuous work, and I'll need absolute silence for the calibration phase. Any vibration or electrical interference could throw off the tuning." He glanced at the monitors showing empty, rain-swept streets above. "Then we do it now. I'll handle perimeter checks and prepare the gear for extraction. Once the emitter is ready, we move at dusk tomorrow. The rail yard will be least monitored during the evening shift change." The hours that followed were intense and unrelenting. I cleared the entire work table and spread out the components Jack had sourced. Small oscillators, tuning forks, copper wiring, and a compact power cell. Using my laptop and the Codex as guides, I began assembling the device. My fingers moved with the precision I had honed over years of handling fragile manuscripts. Every connection had to be perfect. Every soldered joint tested twice. Jack worked nearby without interrupting. He reinforced the outer doors with additional steel bars, packed 2 go bags with essentials, water, medical supplies, spare batteries, and a compact toolkit, and ran diagnostics on the satellite phone. Occasionally, he brought me fresh coffee or a protein bar, placing them within reach without a word. When I needed a second pair of hands to hold a delicate wire in place, he stepped in immediately, his movements steady and exact. As the artificial lights in the safe house dimmed to simulate night, I reached the calibration phase. The emitter lay on the table like a small, intricate puzzle, a black box no larger than a paperback novel with a digital display and a thin antenna. I tuned it slowly, using the black light to reveal hidden markings in the codex that corresponded to frequency markers. The room fell into near total silence except for the soft hum of the device and the distant rain above. Jack stood guard at the monitors, arms crossed, his presence a silent anchor. At 3:17 a.m., by the mechanical clock on the wall, the display finally stabilized at exactly 7.83 hertz. A faint green light pulsed steadily. "It's ready," I said, voice hoarse from disuse. I sat back, shoulders aching, and allowed myself a moment of quiet triumph. "Test it against the Codex reference. It should open the outer door of the second vault without triggering the collapse." Jack crossed the room in 3 strides and examined the device. For the first time since we had entered the safe house, something close to approval flickered across his face. "Good work. We leave at 1900 hours tomorrow. That gives us time to rest and prepare the route." We ate a simple meal together at the table, canned stew heated on the portable stove, eaten straight from the pots to minimize cleanup. The Codex remained open between us, its pages now marked with dozens of my precise notes and highlighted symbols. "You've decoded more in 4 days than my sister managed in months," Jack said quietly, breaking the silence. It was the first personal comment he had made since revealing her fate. I looked up from my mug. She didn't have the full Codex, and she didn't have someone watching her back while she worked. He nodded once, stormy eyes distant. True, but she was relentless, like you. She believed the truth mattered more than safety. He paused, then added, "The veil doesn't just kill, they erase, they rewrite records, discredit witnesses, make entire careers disappear. If they catch us with this emitter and the Codex, they won't just kill us, they'll make sure no one ever believes we existed." The weight of his words settled over the table like another layer of concrete above us. "Then we make sure they can't," I replied. "We document everything. I've been backing up my translations to an encrypted drive. If something happens to us, the data can still get out." Jack studied me for a long moment, then gave a single sharp nod. "We'll add a dead man switch to the satellite phone. If neither of us checks in every 12 hours, it will broadcast the files to 3 secure academic contacts I trust." We spent the remaining hours preparing. I copied the most critical decoded sections onto a second encrypted drive and hid one copy inside the lining of my new jacket. Jack disassembled and reassembled the emitter twice to ensure reliability, then packed it carefully in a padded case. We reviewed the route to the rail yard multiple times. Every alley, every abandoned building, every possible surveillance point. Sleep came in strict 4-hour shifts again. When it was my turn to rest, I lay on the cot staring at the concrete ceiling, the Codex's symbols dancing behind my closed eyelids. The gravity of what we were about to do pressed down on me. We weren't just retrieving an artifact. We were about to open a door that powerful people had killed to keep closed. When Jack woke me for the final preparations, the safe house felt heavier, the air thicker. We dressed in dark, practical clothing, waterproof jackets, sturdy boots, gloves. I tucked the Codex into a slim, reinforced backpack that Jack had prepared. The emitter went into a separate padded pouch strapped across my chest for quick access. Before we left, Jack stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to face me. "Last chance to walk away, Elena Voss," he said, voice low. "You've already done more than most people ever could. Take the encrypted drive and disappear. I can handle the rest alone." I met his stormy blue eyes without hesitation, my emerald gaze steady. "I don't walk away from the truth when it's this close. We finish this together until the map is secured or we're both dead. No half measures." A faint, almost respectful nod was his only reply. We climbed the stairs, moved the false wall panel, and stepped out into the derelict warehouse above. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, but the night air was cold and sharp. Jack led us through the shadows of the industrial district, sticking to back alleys and overgrown lots. Twice we froze as distant headlights swept past. Once a patrol car cruised by slowly, forcing us to press flat against a rusted container until it disappeared. The abandoned rail yard loomed ahead, like a graveyard of steel and concrete. Overgrown tracks disappeared into darkness. Dilapidated buildings sagged under years of neglect. We moved silently between the old freight cars, the emitter now in my hands, ready for activation. Jack raised a hand suddenly. We dropped behind a low concrete barrier. 2 figures moved in the distance. Veil operatives, their silhouettes unmistakable even in the poor light. They were searching the perimeter of Track 7. "They knew we'd come here," Jack whispered. "They're waiting." My pulse quickened, but my hands remained steady on the emitter. "Then we don't give them what they expect. The Codex shows a secondary access point 20 meters east, an old drainage grate. We go under instead of over." Jack's eyes met mine in the darkness. For the first time, I saw something close to trust reflected there. "Lead the way." We crawled through the mud and weeds to the drainage grate. Jack pried it open with a crowbar from his pack while I kept watch. Below lay another tunnel, narrower, older, dripping with water. We descended one after the other, the grate sliding back into place above us with a soft scrape. The air underground was colder, heavier. Our flashlights cut narrow beams through the gloom. I consulted the Codex notes one final time, then activated the emitter. The device hummed to life, emitting a low, steady tone at exactly 7.83 hertz. The sound resonated through the tunnel walls, vibrating subtly in my bones. Ahead, a section of brick wall shimmered faintly, invisible under normal light, but revealed by the frequency. A hidden door. Jack and I approached together. I pressed the emitter against the exact spot indicated in the Codex. The brick slid aside with a deep, grinding sound, revealing a short passage leading to a heavy vault door marked with the same 7-pointed star symbol. We had reached the second vault, but as the door began to open with a hiss of ancient mechanisms, a new sound echoed from the tunnel behind us. The unmistakable click of weapons being readied, and the low voices of men who had been waiting in the darkness all along. The veil had found us. Jack's hand went to the weapon at his side. My grip tightened on the Codex and the emitter. The storm above had followed us underground. And now the real test had begun. The hidden door had barely finished sliding open when the first shot cracked through the tunnel behind us. The sound was deafening in the confined space. A sharp, controlled burst that ricocheted off the concrete walls and sent concrete dust raining down. Jack moved faster than I could process. In one fluid motion, he shoved me sideways into the newly revealed passage, his body shielding mine as he returned fire with the compact pistol he had drawn from his coat. The muzzle flash lit the darkness in harsh strobes. "Inside," he barked, voice cutting through the chaos. "Seal the door behind you." I didn't argue. Clutching the Codex and the still humming emitter against my chest, I scrambled deeper into the short passage while Jack laid down covering fire. My bare hands, gloves long since discarded, scraped against cold brick as I reached the heavy vault door. The 7-pointed star symbol glowed faintly under the emitter's influence. I slammed my palm against the activation plate and spoke the passphrase from the Codex in a rushed, breathless voice. "The map reveals what history conceals." The vault door began to grind open with agonizing slowness, ancient gears protesting after decades of disuse. Behind me, more shots rang out. Jack's precise, economical bursts answered by the rapid, undisciplined fire of the Veil operatives. I heard a grunt of pain from Jack, but when I glanced back, he was still on his feet, blood trickling from a graze along his left arm. "Elena, go!" he shouted without looking at me. I slipped through the widening gap of the vault door the moment it was wide enough, then turned and slammed my hand on the inner control panel. The massive door reversed direction with a deep metallic groan, closing just as two Veil agents rounded the corner of the passage. Jack dove through the narrowing gap at the last second, rolling to his feet inside as the door sealed with a final, resounding thud. Silence fell like a physical weight. We were inside the second vault. The air here was different, cooler, drier, with a faint metallic tang that suggested advanced filtration systems still functioning after all these years. Emergency strip lighting flickered to life along the ceiling, casting a sterile white glow over rows of metal shelving units, sealed glass cases, and thick binders labeled with dates stretching back to the 1800s. The room was larger than I had expected, roughly the size of a small warehouse, with a central console that looked like it belonged in a 1970s sci-fi film mixed with modern touchscreens. Jack leaned against the sealed door, breathing hard, his left arm bleeding steadily from the graze. He pressed a hand over the wound without complaint. "Status?" he asked, voice tight but controlled. I set the codex and emitter down on the nearest console and quickly assessed the room. Door is sealed. No immediate breach points visible. The emitter worked. The resonance opened the outer mechanism perfectly. My emerald eyes scanned the space, cataloging details even as adrenaline still surged through my veins. But they'll find another way in eventually. These vaults were designed with multiple redundancies. Jack nodded once, then moved to a nearby medical kit mounted on the wall. He tore open a packet of gauze and began binding his arm with efficient, practiced movements. "We have minutes, maybe an hour at most, before they bring heavier equipment. Work fast. Find the next coordinate set and any physical artifacts that might give us leverage." I didn't waste time. Pulling on a fresh pair of thin gloves from my pack, I approached the central console while Jack covered the door with his weapon, his stormy blue eyes never leaving the sealed entrance. The console powered up at my touch, surprisingly responsive for its age, displaying a digital interface that mirrored the cipher patterns in the Codex. Page by page, I cross-referenced the physical Codex with the console's database. Symbols aligned. Hidden markers glowed under the black light I had brought. My fingers flew across the touchscreen, decrypting layer after layer. Third vault access requires a physical key. I reported after 10 intense minutes. Not a code, an actual artifact. It's listed here as the resonance key. A small crystal tuned to the same 7.83 Hertz frequency, but amplified. According to the records, it's stored in case 17B. Jack moved to the indicated shelving unit while keeping one eye on the door. He located the case, disabled its simple mechanical lock with a tool from his pack, and lifted out a small, perfectly cut crystal about the size of a walnut. It caught the light with an inner glow that seemed almost alive. "This?" he asked, holding it up. I nodded, comparing it to the Codex illustration. "That's it. But the records warn that the crystal must be activated in sequence with the emitter. Wrong order, and the entire vault network goes into permanent lockdown." A heavy thud echoed from the other side of the sealed door, the veil beginning their breach attempt. The sound vibrated through the floor. Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we activate it now and move. No more delays." We worked together with clinical efficiency. I positioned the emitter on the console while Jack placed the crystal in the designated receptacle. I tuned the device once more, the low hum filling the vault. When the frequency stabilized, the crystal began to pulse with soft blue light. The central console chimed. A new set of coordinates appeared on the screen. The location of the third and final vault, deep beneath the old financial district, accessible only through a forgotten subway maintenance tunnel. "We have it," I said, quickly downloading the data onto the encrypted drive. "But the final vault has an additional safeguard. It requires 2 living operators, one to hold the crystal, one to maintain the frequency. Alone, it won't open." Jack met my eyes across the console. "Then we stay together until the end." Another louder impact shook the vault door. Dust sifted from the ceiling. The veil was bringing something heavier, cutting tools or explosives. "We need to move," Jack said. He grabbed the crystal and secured it in a padded case strapped to his chest. I slipped the Codex back into my backpack and secured the emitter. We headed for the secondary exit marked on the console schematics. A narrow service tunnel at the far end of the vault, that led toward the river district. As we entered the tunnel, the main vault door behind us finally gave way with a screech of tortured metal. Shouts and running footsteps echoed after us. We ran. The service tunnel was narrow and uneven, forcing us to move single file. Jack took point, weapon ready, while I kept the emitter active in case we encountered any secondary locks. Our boots splashed through shallow puddles. The air grew colder and damper the farther we went. Halfway down the tunnel, Jack suddenly stopped and raised a fist. I froze behind him. Ahead, 2 Veil operatives had somehow flanked us, emerging from a side passage I hadn't seen on the schematics. Gunfire erupted again. Jack returned fire with deadly accuracy, dropping 1 man instantly. The second operative dove for cover and returned fire, forcing us to press against the tunnel wall. A bullet grazed the concrete inches from my head, sending shards flying. "Keep the emitter running!" Jack shouted over the noise. "I'll clear the path!" He moved forward in a low crouch, exchanging shots with the remaining operative. I stayed low, protecting the Codex and the emitter with my body. The low hum of the device seemed to vibrate in time with my racing pulse. A final shot rang out. The second operative slumped to the ground. Jack motioned me forward. Blood now stained his sleeve more heavily, but he didn't slow. We continued down the tunnel at a fast jog, emerging eventually into an old subway maintenance chamber beneath the financial district. The coordinates on my notes pointed to a sealed maintenance door at the far end. "This is it," I said, breathing hard. "The entrance to the third vault. We use the crystal and the emitter together." Jack positioned the crystal while I held the emitter steady. The combined frequency filled the chamber with a deep, resonant tone. The sealed door began to glow faintly, then slid open with a hiss. Beyond it lay the final vault, smaller than the second, but far more imposing. Rows of sealed containers lined the walls. At the center stood a single pedestal with a glass case containing what looked like an ancient ledger bound in dark leather, its cover etched with the same 7-pointed star. We stepped inside. The door sealed behind us automatically. For the first time since the library, absolute silence surrounded us. Jack and I approached the pedestal together. I carefully lifted the glass case. Inside lay the archive core. Not just documents, but a master ledger that cataloged every suppressed truth the Veil had tried to bury. Experimental records, political assassinations, lost technologies, and the names of those who had died to protect or conceal them. As I opened the ledger, the pages revealed entries in multiple hands spanning centuries. My emerald eyes widened as I recognized names from history books. Altered events, erased figures, entire bloodlines wiped from official records. "This changes everything," I whispered. Jack stood beside me, the crystal still pulsing softly in his hand. "Then we make sure the world sees it." But even as the words left his mouth, the vault lights flickered. A new alarm began to sound, not from the Veil this time, but from the vault's own ancient security system. The final safeguard had activated. A calm, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "Unauthorized presence detected. Self-destruct sequence initiated. Evacuation window. 12 minutes. Jack and I looked at each other across the open ledger. The storm had followed us to the heart of the secret, and now the clock was ticking down on whether we would escape with the truth or be buried with it forever. The mechanical voice echoed through the final vault like a death sentence. "Unauthorized presence detected. Self-destruct sequence initiated. Evacuation window, 12 minutes. The words hung in the cold, sterile air. Red emergency lights began to pulse along the ceiling, casting everything in a harsh, blood-colored glow. The archive core ledger lay open on the pedestal between Jack and me, its pages filled with centuries of erased history. Names, dates, suppressed experiments, and the cold calculations of power that had shaped the world in secret. My emerald green eyes flicked to the digital countdown now displayed on the central console. 11:58, 11:57. "We move," Jack said, voice sharp and controlled. Blood still seeped from the graze on his arm, but he ignored it. He snapped the ledger shut, wrapped it in a waterproof layer from his pack, and secured it inside my backpack alongside the Codex. "You carry the core. I'll handle extraction." 11 minutes left. I didn't argue. The weight of the ledger against my back felt heavier than the entire building above us. We had come for the truth. Now the truth might bury us. Jack led the way back toward the vault door we had entered through. The emitter and crystal were still in my hands, humming at the precise 7.83 hertz frequency. The door should have opened at our approach, but the self-destruct sequence had already begun overriding secondary systems. A warning panel flashed on the wall. "Manual override required." Jack slammed his palm against the emergency release. Nothing. He tried again, then stepped back and fired 2 controlled shots into the control panel. Sparks flew. The door groaned, but remained sealed. "Secondary exit," I said quickly, pulling up the vault schematics on the small tablet I had taken from the console. "There's an emergency evacuation shaft on the north wall, marked as Maintenance Access Delta. It leads to an old subway tunnel 2 levels up, but the schematics show it was sealed in 1953. "Sealed can be unsealed," Jack replied. He was already moving, scanning the north wall with his flashlight. The red lights continued their steady pulse. The countdown ticked. 10:42. We found the access shaft behind a false panel of reinforced concrete. Jack used a small explosive charge from his pack, no bigger than a deck of cards, to blow the seal. The blast was contained, but loud enough to make my ears ring. Dust and debris filled the air as the shaft opened, revealing a rusty metal ladder ascending into darkness. "Go," Jack ordered. "I'll cover the rear." I climbed first, the ledger and codex secure against my body, the emitter still active in my jacket pocket. My hands gripped the cold rungs tightly. Rust flaked off under my palms. Behind me, Jack followed, pausing every few seconds to listen for pursuit. The ladder seemed endless. My arms burned. My bare legs scraped against the rough concrete walls of the shaft. The red emergency lights from the vault below grew fainter until they disappeared entirely, leaving us in near total darkness broken only by our flashlights. Halfway up, a new sound reached us from below. The heavy thud of the main vault door being breached by the Veil team. Shouts echoed up the shaft. "They're inside," Jack said grimly. "Faster." We climbed harder, my heart hammered against the ledger strapped to my chest. The countdown in my mind continued ticking. 8:19, 8:18. At the top of the shaft, we emerged into an old subway maintenance tunnel. Damp, dripping, lined with ancient pipes and abandoned track sections. The air smelled of mold and decades of neglect. A faint rumble overhead told me we were directly beneath one of the active subway lines. Jack consulted the schematics on my tablet. Surface access is 200 meters east, an old service stairwell that opens behind the financial district plaza, but the Veil will have teams waiting at every known exit. "Then we don't use a known exit," I replied. I pointed to a faded map on the tunnel wall. "There's a collapsed service grate here, marked as unstable. If we can clear it, it leads directly to the river embankment. Less surveillance, more escape routes." Jack nodded once. We sprinted down the tunnel, boots splashing through shallow puddles. The emitter continued its low hum in my pocket, a constant reminder that we still carried the key to everything. The collapsed grate was exactly where the map showed. A rusted metal grid half buried under fallen concrete and debris. Jack handed me his weapon and began clearing the blockage with raw strength and the crowbar from his pack. I stood guard, listening for the sound of approaching footsteps. The countdown in my head wouldn't stop. 6:47, 6:46. A distant explosion rocked the tunnel behind us, the veil triggering something in the vault. Dust rained from the ceiling. Jack worked faster, muscles straining as he heaved aside a large chunk of concrete. "Almost there," he grunted. I kept the weapon steady, emerald eyes scanning the darkness. Then I saw it, the faint glow of flashlights rounding the far bend of the tunnel. 3 figures, moving fast. "Contact!" I shouted. Jack didn't stop working. "Hold them off!" I fired 2 warning shots, the sound deafening in the confined space. The Veil operatives returned fire immediately. Bullets sparked off the tunnel walls. One grazed my shoulder, burning like fire, but I stayed upright and returned fire with controlled bursts, forcing them to take cover. Jack gave a final heave. The grate broke free with a metallic screech. Cold night air and rain rushed in from above. "Go!" he yelled. I climbed through the opening first, pulling myself onto the wet river embankment. Rain lashed my face. The city lights glittered across the water. Jack followed right behind me, then turned and fired down into the tunnel to discourage immediate pursuit. We ran along the embankment, staying low, using the concrete barriers and overgrown vegetation for cover. My shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed it, but I ignored the pain. The ledger and codex were still secure. The emitter continued humming. Behind us, more shouts and flashlight beams pierced the rain. The veil had made it to the surface. We reached a cluster of abandoned shipping containers near the water's edge. Jack pulled me behind one, both of us breathing hard. "Extraction point is 2 blocks north," he said, checking his watch. "There's a pre-positioned vehicle in a parking garage. We can reach it if we cut through the old market district." The rain pounded down, soaking us again. My dark hair clung to my face and neck. Blood mixed with rainwater on my shoulder. "We're not going to make the vehicle," I said, pointing to the schematics still glowing on the tablet. "Look, there's a secondary subway entrance less than 1 block away. If we drop back underground there, we can use the maintenance tunnels to reach the river bridge. From the bridge, we can disappear into the industrial zone on the other side." Jack studied the map for 2 seconds, then nodded. "Your call. Lead." We sprinted again, staying in the shadows. The Veil team was closing in. I could hear their radios crackling and their boots splashing through puddles. Another burst of gunfire erupted behind us. Jack returned fire while running, forcing them to slow. We reached the secondary subway entrance, an old, forgotten stairwell half hidden behind a chain-link fence. Jack kicked the lock open. We descended into another maintenance level, the emitter still active in case we encountered any locked gates. The final minutes of the countdown were ticking in my mind, even though the vault itself was far behind us. The self-destruct had been meant for the vault, but the Veil's pursuit had turned the entire underground network into a death trap. We emerged near the river bridge, soaked, exhausted, and bleeding. The city lights reflected off the rain-slicked water like scattered diamonds. Jack's vehicle was no longer an option. Too exposed. Instead, we commandeered an old maintenance van parked near the bridge approach, hot wiring it in under 90 seconds. As we pulled away into the rain-drenched streets, heading toward the industrial zone on the far side of the river, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The ledger and codex were still with us. The emitter and crystal were secure. We had the map, but in the rearview mirror I saw headlights, multiple vehicles beginning to follow. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel, his stormy blue eyes hard with determination. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "Not until they have the core, or we're dead." I looked down at the encrypted drive in my hand, the one containing every translation, every coordinate, every name from the ledger. "Then we make sure the truth gets out before they catch us," I replied. The rain continued to fall. The chase had only just begun, and somewhere in the city behind us, the vault's self-destruct sequence had finished its work, sealing away centuries of secrets while we carried the last living record into the night. We were no longer researchers or hunters. We were the final guardians of a truth the world was never meant to know. The stolen maintenance van tore through the rain-slicked streets of the industrial zone, its wipers slashing furiously across the windshield. Rain hammered the roof like gunfire. My hands gripped the encrypted drive so tightly, my knuckles had gone white, while the heavy weight of the archive core ledger and the Codex novum pressed against my chest inside the backpack. The graze on my shoulder burned with every jolt of the vehicle, but pain was secondary now. Survival was everything. Jack drove with grim focus, his stormy blue eyes flicking constantly between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. Blood from his arm wound had soaked through the makeshift bandage, staining the sleeve of his dark jacket, but he never slowed or complained. Behind us, at least 3 sets of headlights cut through the downpour, the Vale's pursuit team closing the distance with professional precision. "They're gaining," I said, voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. My emerald green eyes scanned the encrypted drive in my hand. "We have one advantage left, the dead man switch on the satellite phone. If we don't check in every 12 hours, it broadcasts everything. The full translations, the coordinates, the ledger scans, to 3 secure academic contacts I trust, and 2 international journalists." Jack nodded once, swerving the van onto a narrow service road that ran parallel to the river. "Do it. Activate the timer now. Set it for 6 hours. That gives us a window to reach the extraction point I prepared on the far side of the bridge." I worked quickly on the small satellite phone, fingers flying across the tiny keypad in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. The device confirmed the dead man switch was armed. If we failed tonight, the truth would still escape. The Veil could kill us, but they could no longer bury everything. A bullet shattered the rear window. Glass sprayed across the back seat. Jack jerked the wheel hard, sending the van skidding around a corner into a maze of abandoned warehouses and shipping containers. The headlights behind us multiplied, more vehicles joining the chase. "They're not just following," Jack said through gritted teeth. "They're hurting us. They want us away from populated areas." I checked the tablet with the vault schematics. "Then we break the pattern. Take the next left. There's an old rail bridge crossing the river. It's closed to traffic, but the maintenance walkway is still intact. If we abandon the van and cross on foot, we can lose them in the industrial maze on the other side." Jack didn't hesitate. He killed the headlights and swung the van hard left onto the overgrown access road leading to the rail bridge. The vehicle bounced violently over potholes and debris. In the mirror, I saw the pursuing cars overshoot the turn, then slam on their brakes to reverse. We reached the bridge approach. Jack brought the van to a skidding stop behind a rusted container, killing the engine instantly. "Run," he ordered. We exploded out of the van into the pouring rain. I clutched the backpack with the Codex and ledger tight against my body, the emitter and crystal secured in separate pockets. My dark hair was plastered to my face, water streaming into my eyes, but I kept pace with Jack as we sprinted onto the old rail bridge. The metal walkway groaned under our boots. Wind whipped rain sideways across the river far below. Halfway across, flashlight beams swept the bridge behind us. The Veil team had caught up. Shouts echoed over the storm. Gunfire cracked again. Controlled professional shots aimed to wound rather than kill outright. They still wanted the Codex and ledger intact. Jack returned fire while running, forcing the pursuers to take cover behind the bridge's steel girders. A bullet clipped the railing inches from my hand, sending sparks flying. I didn't slow. We reached the far side and dropped down into the dense industrial maze, a labyrinth of derelict factories, overgrown lots, and narrow alleys between towering brick buildings. Jack led us through the twisting paths with the same unerring sense of direction he had shown in the library tunnels. We ducked under fallen scaffolding, climbed over chain-link fences, and slipped through gaps in rusted gates. The pursuit was relentless. Every time we thought we had lost them, another flashlight beam or radio crackle appeared behind us. My legs burned, my shoulder throbbed, but the drive to protect the truth kept me moving. We finally reached Jack's prepared extraction point, a nondescript black SUV hidden inside an abandoned auto repair garage on the edge of the industrial zone. Jack hot-wired it in seconds while I kept watch at the broken window, the satellite phone clutched in one hand. As the engine roared to life, 3 Veil vehicles screeched to a stop outside the garage, blocking the exit. Armed figures poured out, weapons raised. Jack floored the accelerator. The SUV smashed through the garage door in a shower of splintered wood and glass. Bullets riddled the side panels. One shattered the passenger window, showering me with fragments. I stayed low, protecting the backpack with my body. We burst onto the open road, the SUV fishtailing on the wet asphalt, before Jack regained control. The pursuit vehicles gave chase again, but we had gained precious seconds. "Bridge ahead," I said, checking the map on the tablet. "If we cross it and reach the highway on-ramp, we can lose them in traffic." Jack pushed the SUV harder. The rain made the road treacherous, but his hands remained steady on the wheel. In the mirror, the Veil cars were falling back slightly, damaged from the earlier exchange or low on ammunition. We reached the bridge. Halfway across, Jack suddenly braked hard. Ahead, a 4th Veil vehicle had blocked the far end, its occupants already taking firing positions. "Trap," Jack muttered. He spun the wheel sharply, sending the SUV into a controlled skid that turned us sideways. The vehicle slammed into the bridge railing, but held. Jack threw it into reverse, then forward again, aiming for a narrow gap between 2 concrete barriers. More gunfire erupted. A tire blew out with a loud bang. The SUV lurched, but kept moving. Jack fought the wheel, guiding us through the gap and onto the opposite embankment. We careened down a steep service slope, bouncing violently until we hit level ground on the far side of the river. The damaged SUV limped forward for another half-mile before the engine began to smoke and die. Jack brought it to a stop behind a row of shipping containers near the highway on-ramp. We abandoned the vehicle instantly, grabbing the go-bags and running on foot once more. The rain was easing slightly, but the night remained dark and chaotic. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ordinary police responding to reports of gunfire, but we couldn't risk trusting them. The Veil had infiltrated too many levels of authority. We reached the highway on-ramp on foot. Jack flagged down a lone trucker with a quick, authoritative gesture and a handful of cash from his pack. The driver, an older man with a weathered face, took one look at our soaked, bloodied appearance and the urgency in Jack's eyes and nodded without questions. "Get in the back," he grunted. "I'm heading north. Stay low." We climbed into the cargo area among crates and tarps. The truck rumbled onto the highway, merging into sparse late-night traffic. For the first time in hours, the immediate pursuit fell silent behind us. Jack checked the satellite phone. The dead man switch was still armed. No broadcast yet. I opened the backpack carefully and confirmed the codex and ledger were intact, though damp around the edges. The emitter and crystal remained functional. "We made it," I whispered, voice raw. "We have the core." Jack leaned back against a crate, pressing a fresh bandage to his arm. His stormy blue eyes met mine in the dim light, filtering through the truck's canvas cover. "For now," he said quietly. "The Veil lost the physical artifacts tonight, but they still have resources. They'll hunt the data. They'll hunt us. This doesn't end with one escape." I held up the encrypted drive. "Then we don't hide it. We release controlled portions through my academic contacts. Enough to force transparency, but not everything at once. We make the truth too big to bury." Jack studied me for a long moment, the weight of years of loss and vengeance visible in his expression. Then he gave a single, slow nod. "Together," he said. The truck rumbled northward through the night, carrying 2 exhausted survivors and the most dangerous knowledge in the city. Behind us, the Veil would be regrouping, licking their wounds, preparing for the next hunt. But we had the map. We had the truth. And for the first time since that rain-soaked night in the library, the storm no longer felt like it was chasing us. It felt like we were finally learning how to ride it. The road stretched ahead into darkness. We still had work to do.